Hello and welcome to Hospital Survival Guide. I know it's been quite a very long time and I miss you guys. I miss you guys. Do you guys miss me? I already know you guys do. And it's been pretty much a very long time, and I was thinking to myself the other day, I really need to revamp this series. How else am I going to conclude season 1? Until I thought of a bright idea. And I thought about, let me do a season finale. And in this episode today, we're going to be talking about my medical internship experience so far. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon to be receiving notifications of such videos every time I post, and let's jump right in. So for most of you that don't already know, I pretty much do my medical internship at Levin Manawasu University Teaching Hospital. It's a pretty good hospital. I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty good hospital. Met a lot of great people there, and a lot has happened during my medical internship. The good, the bad, the in-between. So I think this will be more of like a chilled session where we like talk one-on-one. I know you guys are used to me talking about, oh no, there's jokes about this clerking, maybe who clerked? You guys are not clerking, you guys are not reading. You guys need to study, young man. This is not science. There's no sense in what you're saying. I'm not going to talk about that, and I'm pretty much going to be talking about my own personal experience, because this is going to be you seeing the internship side in my eyes. So pretty much, let me give you guys a background. So once I finished my medical school, there was a bit of a delay into me starting my medical internship, because at that time there weren't really employments that were running currently in the country. So I really had to wait quite some time, and I couldn't really volunteer because the hospital that I wanted to volunteer at was pretty much very far from where I stayed. So it was a pretty good time for me to actually refresh on certain things, to start stocking up on money, because money is important, guys. Money is important. Even when you're volunteering, money is important, because you need it to actually pretty much survive, because you are not getting paid. So I contemplated my choices, and eventually there were some contracts that actually came up. That was, I think, last year. There were some contracts that came up, and luckily enough, I was picked for one of those contracts, and I was taken to Levin Manawasu University Teaching Hospital. And those contracts were actually under the COVID department, so I was intended to work in the COVID department. But funny thing is that when I actually reported for work, I found that my friends had already reported much earlier. They had even gotten an orientation of how to deal with COVID patients, and I was pretty much just like a new person there. Like, I was alone, and you can imagine being alone on the first day, and it's just awkward. So when I got to the hospital, I think that must have been a Thursday or Friday, I went to see the head clinical care, which is the HCC, not hepatocellular carcinoma. I went to see the head clinical care. Eventually it was a process. I couldn't do it over the weekend, so I think I had completed the process on Tuesday. So on a Tuesday, when I completed the process, I was assigned to surgery, funny enough, because the COVID department was already stocked with a lot of interns. So I was redirected to go to surgery, and I went to report to the boss, and then the boss actually, I didn't find the head of department at that time, but I found a group of doctors that were doing around. I think they were supposed to have theater day on that particular day, and they said, oh, why don't you join our unit? And that's how the consultant actually called the HOD for surgery that we have a new intern, and actually I want him to be placed in my unit, and he's going to come and see you much later on. So that's how I ended up in that department in surgery. Funny thing, I got there and only to be told that, oh, we don't have any theater cases today. We're pretty much, they were cancelled. So we'll see you tomorrow, and tomorrow is call day. Imagine that, on the first day of reporting, and you're already thrown into the deep end, and it's call day. And surgery it was quite hectic, and I can't say that I didn't like it. It was quite enjoyable, because most of the things that you would do for the patients, you would instantly see the results. For example, someone comes in with a dislocation of the shoulder, you do your traction, counter traction, it snaps back in. There's just that gratification that you get when you actually solve this person's problem. Then surgery was quite alright. The only thing that I did not like about surgery was pretty much the standing. It was a lot, guys. Yo, like I developed calves like as if I was playing football, and I don't even play football. I just support. I don't know if you can see. Oh, this is the wrong side. I don't know if you can see. I just support. So it's been a long time since I've done sports. The last time I did sports, I think I was in high school, and that's a very, very long time ago. So I pretty much did not like the standing. We had a lot of standing in theater, especially you're on court day at 02, someone comes with intestinal obstruction, and you're like, oh my goodness. I was pretty much seated in the core rooms every single time, and every time I heard an ambulance, my heart would just be racing, because is this an emergency? Does this mean that this patient has to be taken to theater? And the process of taking the patient to theater from downstairs, oh my goodness, guys, oh my goodness. I think that's one thing that I did not really enjoy about surgery. But all in all, surgery was a pretty good experience. I had a lot of fun. I can't say that I learned a lot of new things, because most of the things were really taught in 7th year. If you really pay close attention to your 7th year, you'll find out that most of the things actually do get taught in 7th year. So that's one thing that really helped in surgery. The only thing that you actually should really pester to actually learn at the clinical skills, so things like suturing, things like managing trauma patients, because you'll be dealing with those things in surgery. Then after that, I was pulled out from surgery because the COVID had become rampant at that stage. We were hit, I think that must have been the 4th wave, where they pulled us out from all our departments because the COVID department was full with patients, and I think Levy at that point was one of the departments that remained open or one of the COVID centers that remained open during that period. So yo, guys, it was intense. Like during this period, I had a lot of learning moments, because I really learned the art of resuscitating patients, the art of dealing with critical patients, because those patients, literally, you could see a person almost dying in your arms, and if you don't do anything, this person is actually going to die. I think that's one of the positives that I learned, is pretty much resuscitation and getting a good idea of how to deal with critically ill patients, especially those that come in with respiratory conditions. Of course, we were just managing mostly the COVID, but we would also get patients here and there that come in with other comorbidities, like for example COVID. I remember dealing with a patient that came in with COVID and hyperglycemic hyposmolar state. That was a pretty interesting case, and this man actually came in unconscious, guys. Like, he was almost unconscious, and he was literally on his last breath. And I did a urinalysis, did all the things, made a diagnosis of HHS, managed the patient, and actually I kept being anxious. I didn't even go to rest on that particular day. I kept checking on this patient because I had it in the back of my mind that, oh, I have a patient that's I'm managing for HHS, so I have to continue monitoring this patient. Early in the morning, lo and behold, this man's sugars are well controlled, and I'm like, hallelujah. I'm like, you know that sound that you make for the angels? I know I'm gonna play it in the background, and I was just like, thank God for actually this man actually pulling out. The relative actually even talked to me. I was like, the way you've handled us is a very unique way, and I haven't actually, the many times that I've gone to the different hospitals, I've never had the experience to actually meet someone who has handled this situation the way you've handled, even though they may not have gone in such a state in another hospital, but I don't know. But I guess it's because I kept on liaising with the relatives, I kept them in the loop, and of course they saw how critical the condition of the man that came in, and eventually in the morning the man was talking, and it was like a miracle, guys. It was like a miracle. That was one of the good things that I actually experienced during my period of internship. Then the bad thing that I experienced is, of course, you never get used to it. You never get used to breaking bad news. It's never the same. Each time is different. I remember there was one time where I was dealing with a boy that was admitted in ICU, and this guy, I think, must have been 19 years old. He came in, he had COVID, and I think he also had a mandibular tumor or something like that. don't know if it was a mandibular tumor or he had trauma. But I was called to review this patient roughly at around 02, and this patient, the stats were dropping, so we escalated from nasal prongs, we escalated them to a non-rebreather mask, we escalated him to a C-circuit mask. Eventually, we were even contemplating putting him on a vent. But eventually, the BPs also started to drop. We gave him the adrenaline, we gave him the dopamine infusion, but still, this didn't help so much. So eventually, this child deteriorated and ended up dying, and I was there, so I had to certify that this child had died. And just as I'm about to leave, and take a note, this is me coming from surgery where not a lot of people die. So I'm now in the COVID department where a lot of patients are now dying, and I'm about to leave the ICU, and the sister there is like, "Oh doc, aren't you going to break the bad news to the father? Should I call the relatives?" And then I'm like that. I'm like, you know, when your brain does that loading thing, like loading, beep, beep, beep. And I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's supposed to do this. But in the back of my mind, I already knew that, yeah, it's actually my job to actually break the bad news to the family. So I then sucked it up. Sat the man down, and this was the father to the young boy that had just died. Explained the condition to him that, oh no, this is what you were managing your boy for. His BP started dropping, his saturations weren't so good. We improved the saturations, and we tried to actually pick up the BP. It rose for a bit, and then eventually it fell, and then I'm sorry that we have lost him, and I'm sorry for your loss. And I remember that time, it felt so heavy in my heart. Like so heavy, I almost broke down into tears. But you can't break down into tears at that particular moment, because I mean, if you break down into tears, you won't be able to do your job, and how is the patient going to view you? So I had to keep it together, and each time I had to break bad news in the future, it's not like I got used to it. It's not like it was the same. Every experience was different, and I had a lot of the bad news breaking during the COVID department. Even when I moved on to the internal medicine department, when we were reposted back to Levy, it actually is quite hectic. So those are some of the bad things that I actually faced. Then the other bad thing that's actually experienced during my internship, and I'm still experiencing, guys, it's the fatigue. Doctors are always tired. I once saw a meme this past few days. I was like, being a doctor is just pretty much about complaining about being tired to other doctors that are tired, telling them that you're tired. So it's pretty much just the fatigue and everything that is going on in your life. And all the time you're tired, you hardly ever get time to yourself, and pretty much, guys, your social life, guys, finish internship very quickly because you will always be tired. It's only now that we have more numbers on the hospital, and we can now work much more reasonable shifts. And of course, patients are going to be seen, but patients can also be divided. You don't end up seeing the whole country. I always tell my students during my core days is that you can always end up seeing the whole country, and I do not want to end up seeing the whole country. So there's this chronic fatigue that you always just have during medical internship. The other thing that I actually can say is in between is that I got to realize that there is so much that I don't know. Like a lot that I don't know. I know most of you are saying, oh wow, but don't you have a YouTube channel? Don't you write these books? Guys, anyone can write a book. Today, if I just call someone from the streets and say, okay, please just summarize this and put it here and put this here, put this image there, they'll write a book. Does that mean that they understand what is in the book? Does that mean that they can remember what is in the book? Not entirely. So writing a book, having a YouTube channel and teaching on a constant daily basis, of course it helps me refresh the content in my mind, but it doesn't entirely help with remembering every single thing. I've met so many consultants that are very knowledgeable, and this consultant is actually pretty much percussing you on the different things, and they are pretty much asking you things that you have never heard of. Truth be told, I've actually learned a lot of new things in my internal medicine rotation than I have when I was back in school, because back in school, you were reading in an attempt to pass the exam. So pretty much you weren't really focusing on the finer details. But now that you're in internship and you're not really looking forward to any other exam, you're pretty much going to be reading now to understand, reading to make a good doctor, to be a better doctor, to be a better person. So I got to learn a lot of new things, and I realized that medicine is endless. You can never understand everything. There's always, each and every single day, there will always be something new that you learned, the syndrome that you've never heard of, and it's a constant learning process, and that's what's encouraging, that you keep learning. And to some extent, it was actually quite depressing for a bit. Like, to some extent, it was quite depressing. Why? Because there are a lot of these new things that you don't know, and then you wonder and you sit and you ask, are my colleagues, do they know these things? Did they learn them in school? Did I miss the day? Or worse off, if the students are answering, you know that in your mind, when they ask a question, usually they pose the question to the students, and then if the student answers, in your mind you also have a proposed answer that you want to give. And if you don't know the answer to the question, but yet the students actually answer it, then it makes you contemplate about life. You just be there like, I really have to think about my life and my career choices. Why did I get here? And so that's one of the things that was rather in between. And the good thing that I can say was very good during my medical internship is pretty much I got to meet a lot of interesting people. I got to meet a lot of interesting patients. There were patients that were very grateful for my services. I got to meet a lot of doctors that were willing to teach me. I got to meet a lot of doctors that actually showed confidence in me, that actually trusted me. And this is actually a quite rare thing when you find someone that can trust you in the medical realm. And of course, not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but it's just the way it is. Then the other thing, and the final thing that I actually really loved during this medical internship, guys, ka-ching, it's the money, guys. Do it for the money. But I'm just joking. But money is important, guys. Hey, money is important. You need money to survive. And that's pretty much my journey during my medical internship. I'm hoping that it will continue being smooth without any hitches and any bumps here and there. And I hope to make it to the end and eventually specialize and go on to become a physician, God willing. That's where I want to actually put my eggs in that basket. So if you really did enjoy this video, please subscribe to the channel to be receiving such amazing content on a daily basis. This is indeed the season finale and the final episode of season 1 of Hospital Survival Guide. It's been a blast. Thank you to each and every one of you for actually showing the immense support to this channel, the immense support to this series, and actually for spreading the word. I know that you guys keep talking about the channel, and I know I haven't been in the best of places of recent because I had a very huge tragedy in my life. For some of you that don't know why I actually had to step back from the social media, why I had to step back from YouTube and making the videos, is because recently I had my sister passing. So I really hope you guys are well right now. I'm in a much better place, and I know she's in a much better place, and big ups to each and every one of you. Keep subscribing. I hope we reach 4K before June, or before even February. Who knows? Maybe we'll reach 4K before February. But for now, I'll see you in the next video. To Zambia and beyond, my name is Dr. Moses Kazevu. Until next time, bye-bye.